Hey, hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Tobias, and on my channel I talk about music, and as an added bonus, usually I throw in some Swinglish here and there, and that's because I'm originally from Sweden, now living in the UK, so that's just the way things are. Yeah, so today's episode I wanted to tackle re-evaluation of genres, artists, albums, whatever. And it's not the same as rediscovering something, because rediscovering to me is more like something that I used to listen to, but I haven't listened to it for years, so I basically forgot about it. And when I started listening to it again, I was like blown away how good it was. I forgot about it. It's not that. This is about re-evaluating something that I might have frowned upon back when I was younger, for example. And for me, that was, of course, if you've been following my channel, you know about this. It was hard rock, heavy metal, basically most rock. That's it. Because to me, from an early day, and for you guys who haven't seen my earlier videos, I'm just going to do a short one. When in the late 70s, I think 79, I switched schools because my father was working abroad and the whole family moved with him. So I started a new school, and the first day of school I was asked by my classmates, hey, what do you listen to? Is it the Beatles or Kiss? I had nothing in between to choose from. It was either the Beatles or the Kiss. And me, I didn't really know who the Beatles was at this point, I don't think. Kiss, certainly not. So I was stumped. But after some encouragement from some of my friends, my new classmates, and they got me to listen to some Beatles tracks and some Kiss tracks, I was in the Beatles camp. That was poppy, it was nice. But at the same time, I think I bought, I know that I bought, or my parents bought me some cassettes with Kiss albums on. And I tried to listen to them because I wanted to be in the cool camp as well, right? But yeah, no, to me it was just a wall of noise. But the most frightening thing about it was probably one of the covers that I vividly remember. There was Gene Simmons there, and he was bleeding from his mouth. He's got an injury of some sort, I thought, and yeah, no, it was just horrifying. So Beatles it was. So yeah, there was two camps there. Fast forward to mid-80s, I would say 84, 85, I got really hooked on electronic music back then, synth music, we would call it synth pop today. So we're talking Depeche Mode, early electronic music with Kraftwerk, and then later on subgenres like body music. I'm talking Front 242, Nitzer Ebb, of course, and the list goes on and on and on. So once I discovered electronic music that way, my mind was blown. It was like, this is a new world that's opened up to me, and I love it. Anything that had to do with hard rock, heavy metal, or even rock, it was just, no, it's nothing for me. I made my mind up, and they are just posers. Just look how ridiculous they are on that cover, on that poster, or whatever. Never mind that a lot of the synth groups back then looked as ridiculous as well, but that was not on my radar. But yeah, that's just the way I thought, and I made my mind up without even sitting down and have a proper listen to some of these groups. Of course, I heard some tracks on either radio or I seen the video on the telly. But yeah, I think the most striking thing was with hard rock and heavy metal was their covers. And the record covers, that is, and some of the videos as well. They were always very striking, always based on some fantasy literature, of course, or it could be a future, a dystopic future and all that. So that was quite eye-catching, but I made my mind up. I didn't like that at all. So I was very narrow-minded. I had my blinders on. It was just electronic music from here on. And I'm not talking about pop music here, because that was always there, like a foundation, because that was on the charts. It was something that we were actively listening to. But at this point, electronic music, synth, that was up here. And of course, two camps was formed here as well. And I say, of course, because that always happens. We heard about the Beatles and Kiss before, right? So now the time came for the synths against the hard rockers. And for the longest time, I thought this was just a phenomenon from that small village where I grew up in and the neighboring areas. But of course it wasn't. Speaking to friends of mine here in the UK now, they discovered they experienced the same thing back then in the 80s here in the UK. So it was just in Sweden. What I'm talking about here is, of course, the lovers of hard rock and heavy metal met, for example, in town, a group of synths. People that were loving synth music, had a short hair, black clothes, all that, and they were like, "Oh, are you synths? Oh, are you hard rockers?" And you had this tension going on between these two groups, and sometimes fights broke out over listening to different music and loving different music. It was such a weird time.
Anyone here like the Human League?
You just watch your steps, Sonny.
So yeah, before I go on here, I just want to ask you guys my first question for the day. When you grew up, did you have a similar situation? Were there clashing gangs, where you had people listening to hard rock or heavy metal against the synths? Or did you grow up loving rap and you had a different faction over here saying, "Hey, you rappers," or something like that? I don't know. Folk music, perhaps? I don't know. Yeah, so please tell me down in the comments. I would love to hear some of these stories from other parts of the world, really. So yeah, really weird phenomena, right? Bickering about what music you're listening to, and if you don't listen to the right music, I'm gonna beat the crap out of you, basically. Yeah. No, so that's where I'm going to come into re-evaluating things, because I really needed to re-evaluate things that I frowned upon back then because I didn't give it a chance, right? So I'm just going to go through some examples here today. So I think it wasn't until the late 80s, or it might have been a bit late than that, but it doesn't matter, where I actually sat down for the first time and heard a hard rock record in full, or a band, whatever, yeah. And I was like, I think this was in the late 80s or beginning of the 90s, and I said, well, they can do some interesting things with guitars, because I refused to acknowledge that earlier, that you could actually do something interesting with the guitar. It's just, to me, synthesizers, they were so diverse, they could do anything. You could sample things, for example. What can you do with a guitar? You can just strum it and it just sounds awful. Of course, that's wrong, and I realized that then. But then the 90s came. I was very heavily invested once again in another electronic genre, or genres, I would say. So it was acid house, techno, and of course that didn't last for the whole of the 90s, but nearly, I would say. So at the end of the 90s, I was so fed up on electronic dance music, so I just needed a palate cleanser. And I think that is where my re-evaluation started for real. Because at this point, we already had the Britpop have swept over us and already left us. We had the grunge that came and went. There was so much in the mix during the 90s. And like I said, you had the underground synths there with techno, acid house, of course, spilling over from the 80s. And all of this, the trance scene, and yeah, there was so much going on, really. But me being so heavily invested in not only listening to all these electronic music throughout the 90s and dance music, but also producing it myself, I just came out with a fatigue, really. So I think the late 90s, the pop was always there for me, because I was still listening to what was on the charts and so forth and so on, but not in the same extension that I did in the 80s. But then I think in the late 90s, coming out from this fatigue, I started listening more to the pop music, some of the things that were influenced from a dance scene, but were more poppier, so to speak. And you also had more guitar influenced things that started popping up here and there. You had the odd ones, right? So that's where I decided I just need something else, something, like I said, a palate cleanser. So I started diving into some of the albums that I remember from back in the day, seeing in record shops, for example, and things like that. And I had a really good discussion with a friend of mine where we were talking about how it was going into a record shop in the 80s especially, and our memories from that. And not only record shops, because you could buy records basically everywhere. So we went to the supermarket, they usually had a big section of records as well where you can buy. And that's usually where we bought the records we bought in the 80s, at least me. So being there with my family, I remember vividly at some point in the 80s coming into this big supermarket with a big record section as well, and feeling this smell of leather. It really smelled like leather in there for a certain point in time. And it turns out it was a record, and I assume it was a new record by Motorhead at that time, that had this jacket, the record jacket on it was made from, I don't think it was leather, it was like faux leather, but it did smell like leather, and it filled the whole section there. And to me, looking at that one, it was this black cover with an embossed Motorhead logo, you know, that skull logo, whatever they had there, and the name Motorhead. So those were the covers that created this smell in there, and that had been etched in my mind and in my nose ever since then. So every time I smell that leathery smell, I always think of that record, that Motorhead record. Yeah. And of course, it's not at the same time period, but the mind gets muddled and you can't really keep track of when and where everything was in time. But to me, everything happened at the same time in there. So that's where I encountered a lot of my heavy metal and hard rock records as well. And like I said before, they were really striking, the covers they had, and of course the videos as well. But the record covers, they were so striking. I remember seeing Scorpion covers in there for some of their records. One of them had this man who was sitting in the backseat of a car, and he just leans over and picks up a piece of gum that was stuck to this lady's chest. Yeah, that's what I thought, at least back then. And then there was another cover with a group called Saxon, and Crusader is the name of the album. So there's this wonderful painting of knights on a battlefield, and in the center of this drawing there is this knight on a horse, and it looks really intimidating. And my mind always went like, this must be really, really heavy music. If I listen to this one, my ears will bleed, basically. It looked really intimidating to me. So there's a lot of these covers. So thinking back on all these covers that I saw in record shops and in supermarkets back then, I was like, I'm going to go back to some of them and listen to them. What were they really like? Were they really that heavy? And the answer, of course, is no. In later years, I picked up some of these records in second hand, just to have a listen to them. This was before we started to stream music for real, so you had to pick up physical copies. And one of them that I picked up was from my earlier memories, and that is Kiss, of course. It was this one, Creatures of a Night, and the reason for this one is not so much that I saw this cover in the shops, but I did see these eyes somewhere else, and that was in a video from the early 80s, I'm sure. And I remember seeing it a couple of times, and it gave me nightmares after seeing it. I just remember, and I should have watched it back now, but I think it's really interesting to just pull it from my mind here. I remember it was a family eating their dinner or something, and then intermixed with this, you could see the Kiss members rocking it out on a tank or a big truck or something like that. And it was all very dark, and a sense of brooding in the air. Anyhow, at the end of the video, the people around the members of Kiss, they all got these glowing eyes, and you can see them glowing here, but I think in the video they didn't have any pupils at all. It was just a big mass of white just glowing. And the whole thing ended in one family member just turns to the camera and they freeze the picture and the eyes glows like that. He's got been possessed or whatever. Yeah, it gave me nightmares. So that's what I was looking for. So when I saw this cover, I was like, oh, it must be from the Creatures of the Night. And of course it was. It was I Love It Loud. It was a video for that one. And it's a great, great song. And of course, this is a very melodic, I would say rock, perhaps hard rock. It's very melodic and very easy to listen to. And I love this album. So that is probably where my evaluation journey started for real. When it comes to hard rock, at least. And then it just continued. I already mentioned Saxon. That was something I picked up a couple of years later. Wasn't that long ago, to be honest. But I did pick up this one after listening to it on a streaming service. And I picked this one up along with Crusader, the album with the knight, the intimidating knight on. And I got that on CD here behind me somewhere. But yeah, these two. So they are the two big 80s albums, I would say, from them, to at least to my knowledge. But I do love them. Again, very melodic, nice hard rock. But I think the best one I picked up from Saxon, and it wasn't that long ago. I think it was either during the pandemic or just before the pandemic. I started listening to Saxon again and just like, yeah, they were really, really good. This is probably my favorite album. I picked it up then. This is a reissue of Power and the Glory. So yes, really like this one. And once again, one of their 80s albums. I'm still gravitating against 80s music. And by the way, that one's got a lovely colored vinyl when you bought that reissue. Here it is. And as you can see, it really looks like these neon colors that goes through the cover as well. Really nicely done. But most importantly, I think it's a great, great album. And something I put on quite a lot, to be honest. Another one that I remember seeing in the record stores, I went back to listen to reevaluate, was Dio. And the reason I went back to this one is, firstly, I saw this cover in the record stores back then in Sweden. And yeah, it is very intimidating for a young mind. You got this demon over here, it's just swinging his whip there, or is it chain as a whip, against this poor bloke here, it's a priest, chained down in the water. And it's a absolutely stunning cover. I think back then this didn't give me nightmares as such, but it's etched into my mind because it was such a striking cover. And it is a great cover, isn't it? This is Holy Diver, of course, with Dio. And this is a copy that I picked up when I was in Sweden a couple of years ago in second hand. And I love this one because it's still got a sticker here. So if you were ever in doubt, this was heavy metal or folk music or something like that, you were like, oh no, heavy metal, and you got that fist, just heavy metal. This is heavy for sure. Yeah, so that was Dio. And another reason I went back to Dio was not just this cover. It was a video that I saw in the 80s as well. Very striking video with them called not Hold the Line, because that was something else. Hold the line! It was Last in Line, of course, with Dio. And I remember the video. They were either the group or some characters in the video were going down in a lift. An elevator, as you say in the US. And he went down to hell, basically. And there's really striking images in that video. And I do remember it was a pretty catchy song, because I did remember the chorus from that one as well, now that I listen back to it. So my plan is to pick up that album as well, because I love that song. And of course, I've listened to the whole album on my streaming service. And yeah, it's another great one. And this, by the way, if I didn't say it, Holy Diver, I think that is a great one. I love Ronnie James Dio's voice. Wow. What a record. So yeah, there you go. My reevaluation of some heavy metal. And another one sitting here right behind me is Doro. And Doro was mentioned on a YouTube channel that I watched during the lockdown as well. And I was like, who is Doro? And they were speaking about this heavy metal queen from Germany. So I went on to Spotify to just stream a couple of tracks, and once again, melodic hard rock or heavy metal. Really liked it, and it turns out she has a vast background in heavy metal, of course, now doing her own thing since years and years ago. Doro. So that's another one. This is her latest album that I bought, I think it was last year. Yeah, good one. So yeah, some really good palette cleansers from now and then. I can't just sit around listening to one genre of music. That would be really boring. But if it was up to me during the 80s and a good portion of the 90s, that's exactly what I would be doing. But I love to have these records for the different moods that I'm in, because sometimes I just want to have that energy that the new Saxon album, for example, gives me. I love that one, Hellfire and Damnation. Really, really good. So yeah, my mind changed on heavy metal and hard rock and all of that. I listen to quite a lot of diverse music today. And to round things off, I just want to say that happened with pop as well when it comes to reevaluating things. And I want to say that happened with Wham, for example. I was a bit iffy about this one because it goes somewhere on the line of rediscovering and reevaluating. But I decided it's a reevaluation, because when they released Wake Me Up Before You Go Go in 1984, I thought it was a really catchy tune, but I didn't run out to the record shops and bought it. And I can't even remember having it on a mixtape. And I'm pretty sure the thinking was like this, and it's going to sound stupid, but hey, we were young, and this is what we were saying about Wham, for example. That is something that the girls in our class, in our school, was listening to. My sister was a big Wham fan, so it wasn't really it was a girly thing. I know it sounds stupid, but yeah, that's what we thought about it. Yeah, no, so whatever. George Michael went solo, of course, later in the 80s after the whole Wham thing was over. And for some reason, it was more acceptable to like George Michael than when he went solo, because he was a serious artist, right? He was still writing his own songs like he did when he was in Wham. So I really don't know the distinction. But I was in the same mindset, so that's where I actually started listening for real to George Michael, this wonderful voice he had. And I also at that point picked up 2 singles. To my surprise, I had 2 Wham singles in my collection. And that's a good thing about moving house, because that got me the opportunity to go through my record collection once again. And I had a couple of aha moments doing this, because there was some things like the 2 Wham singles that I have, and I'm going to save those for another episode here on my channel. But I did discover 2 Wham singles in my collection that I bought. But these were picked up in the late 80s, if I'm not mistaken. So Wham will be put in, even if I know it's a borderline case here, in the reevaluation compartment, because I did reevaluate them at this point. Yeah, let's say it. Another one from the 80s that I did reevaluate and does belong in the pop genre, that is Samantha Fox and Touch Me. This was a big hit for her. It's a debut single from Samantha Fox as well. And I used to talk myself into that this is a great one. But the truth is, I thought she was good looking and she was hot. And I remember when I picked up this one, this exact 12-inch of Touch Me. I think it was my dad who said, "Oh, you bought a record," and I showed him this one. Oh yeah, it's Samantha Fox. So, oh yeah. So Of course, you're gonna like that. She's good looking. Oh no, 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 no. Of course, that's not why I bought it. It's a really good song and all that, that crap. And he said, well, if I were to take this cover away and I'll give you a blank sleeve where you can put the record in, and you can have it like that. Would you have it? Yes, of course. It's all about the music, right? And yeah, of course it wasn't. I wasn't okay with that. I bought this one because I thought she was good looking, not because the song was really great. It was okay, and still today, I think it's... So, yeah, I bought it because she was good looking. Hey, I was 15 at the time, so it's just the way it was. Anyhow, fast forward a couple of years, and Samantha Fox released another single. Well, she already released a couple of singles since Touch Me, of course, and I bought a couple of them as well, but it was more or less based on the same criteria as the first one. But in 1988, she released this one. I Just Want to Be With You. I Only Want to Be With You, it's called, sorry. And this is a cover, and she is doing a great job with it. And I'm going to say she's done a really good job with her voice. It's great on this track. And the production is, of course, Stock Aitken and Waterman. And I didn't love everything that Stock Aitken and Waterman did, but a lot of it, yes, for sure. And I have quite a lot of Stock Aitken and Waterman in my collection. But Samantha Fox, I saw her in a different light, so I re-evaluated her, right, at this point, because I saw her for the first time, not as someone just good looking and hot. It was a great artist with a great voice and a fantastic cover. And since then, I listened back to some of the later stuff as well that she did. I have a couple of those records in my collection, and it's great. So I do recommend, if you're not that fond of her first couple of singles, go and revisit her second album, third and fourth and even fifth album. Yeah, you didn't know she made that many, right? But yeah, it's really good. So that's another re-evaluation I did. Okay, let's fast forward a bit now. We're in 1998 or 1999, around that time period. Britney Spears released her debut single, Baby One More Time. Of course, produced by the super producer from Sweden, Max Martin, and the Cheiron studio. That's where it all blew up, really. A lot of artists around this time got produced by the Cheiron studio and Max Martin. Anyhow, this was a catchy tune, of course, a classic nowadays. I think everyone knows it. There's been covers done for this one and so forth and so on. And at the time, I remember it was a catchy tune, but it was nothing that I went out and bought as a CD single or anything like that. And she then released three albums, I think it was, before the 2003 album, which was called In the Zone. And this is where my ears perked up for real when it comes to Britney Spears. She released Toxic, and it's a great tune. I mean, I'm not alone in liking this one. I think it's instantaneously recognizable once you hear the first two bars on that one with that synth sound. Very recognizable, and of course a video helped as well for this song. But yeah, really good pop song, and a friend of mine at the time actually told me, do you know it's Kathy Dennis who wrote that one? And I was like, what? Kathy Dennis? Gotta love Kathy Dennis, right? What brilliant tracks she released in the early 90s. I got plenty of them here in my collection as well. But at the time when Toxic was released, like I said, I was blown away. It was Kathy Dennis who wrote that for Britney Spears. She actually co-wrote it with some other people. But yeah, that goes to show you learn something every day. And later on, I also learned that she was the writer behind Can't Get You Out of My Head, the big Kylie song, right? And that's another wow moment for me. And she also co-wrote I Kissed a Girl for Katy Perry. So yeah, that goes to show. I think she just decided to step out of the limelight herself, not being in focus as an artist, just doing the songwriting bit. But she did release really good club tunes, like I said, in the early 90s. And then later on in the 90s, she did a brilliant rendition of the Kinks' Waterloo Sunset, which I think is stunning. But that's enough about that. Back to Britney Spears and Toxic. Yeah. So this changed my perception of Britney totally. Because like I said, up to this point, I only heard her basically on radio, and it was like, yeah, it's okay, pop songs. But I didn't feel I was a target audience. But this re-evaluated my view of Britney Spears, because this was sounding really fresh. It was a different direction for her. And no wonder she did have the Swedish duo Bloodshy and Avant as producers for this track. And they would also appear on the album where Toxic is featured. It's this one, it's called In the Zone, came out in 2003 as well. And at the time, I didn't pick this up. I don't know why. I was satisfied with the Toxic single. I didn't care about the album for some reason. But now, a couple of years ago, I listened to it on streaming services and I was blown away. Of course, I heard the first track on this one, which is Me Against the Music, with Madonna, of course, being a Madonna fan and all. But that was basically it. Toxic and Me Against the Music. But a couple of years ago, streaming this one, I was like blown away by the material. It's a completely different Britney to my ears. And no wonder, there's a ton of producers on this one. The Matrix is here, Bloodshy and Avant, I already talked about. We have Moby here as well, along with others. It's a really, really good produced record. So when they were reissued on vinyl, I can't remember when it was. I think I picked this one up a year ago or so. And I was like, yeah, I have to pick this one up. And if you're interested, they were pressed on different colored vinyls. This one, as you can see, on baby blue variant. And they're really good pressings. Nice, quiet, dynamic, and all that. Sounds really good. So I'm really glad to have this in my collection. But what really turned things for me when it comes to Britney is her next album that was released in 2007. And I think most of you who are listening to this have heard it at some point, but leading up to 2007, she was really struggling personally. And she was hounded really by press, the media, and she just got enough. She was at the breaking point, or she hit a breaking point. After that, she went to record a new album, and once again, Bloodshy and Avant is very frequently used on this one, along with Neptunes, among others. A lot of Swedish things on this album, which is called Blackout. And this, to me, is the high point for Britney Spears, certainly. It's a more mature sound from In the Zone. She just developed that one. I mean, just the first track of this album says it all, where she declares,
"It's Britney, bitch."
This just to say, I'm back and I'm doing things my way now. It's my product. I'm not going to let anyone else tell me what to do. This is what you're going to get with Britney Spears from now on. And yeah, it's really that. And there are some really good tracks here. Give Me More, which was the opening track, of course. A Piece of Me, which I think is outstanding. I could list all of these, actually, because it's such a good album. And like I said, there are not only Bloodshy and Avant was involved in this. There was many producers, Neptunes already mentioned, but also Claes Åhlund from Sweden. I think he was part of Teddy Bear Stockholm. And of course, Robin as well, one of my favorite Swedish artists, was doing backing vocals for some of these tracks as well. And it is a very, very good record. So In the Zone and this one I picked up at the same time when they were reissued. And I actually picked up the next album from her as well, Circus, which I think is good. But this is the peak of Britney Spears in my book. I really love this one. And just like the other one, for people who are curious, this comes on a beautiful orange vinyl and as good as a press as In the Zone. Yeah, so I was totally converted, it's called, to Britney at this point. They will never leave my collection, these two records. I really love them. Another artist that came along at the same time as Britney, around 98, 99, that was Christina Aguilera, and both of them had a background in the Disney Club or something like that. Yeah, doesn't matter, but it's just a coincidence perhaps, I don't know. But anyhow, Christina Aguilera, wonderful voice of course, but once again, her first album with the hit Genie in a Bottle, among others, it had the same effect on me really when I heard it. It was like, yeah, it's good, but I wasn't the target audience really, I thought. But then this album turned up. And I went out and bought it after just hearing 2 or 3 tracks from it, because I was blown away. It was a completely different one. Of course, style-wise, the appearance-wise, it was different. But most importantly, the music was different. It seems like she also decided, I'm going to take things in my own hands, and this is my product. No one else is going to tell me what to do, really. It's just a feeling I got from this. But it is a really good album. It's called Stripped. I think most of you have heard of it, at least the first single from it, Dirty, which was a big one, a controversial video and all that. But there are so many good tracks on this. We got Fighter, of course, which is one of the great singles from this one, and one of the most beautiful ballads ever recorded, no pun intended. It's called Beautiful. It's really, really good. And this is actually I still got the original CD from when I bought it back then. And then I was hooked on that. Of course, got a beautiful voice and all of that, but the productions on the records are just outstanding as well. The next one was Back to Basic, and a lot of influences from 1920s music here with a modern twist, of course. And once again, a really lengthy album. If I didn't say it, Stripped is a really lengthy one. I think this one is even longer. And then this one came out, Bionic, which was really slated by the press at the time and some of the fans, but I loved it and still do. But it's getting a bit of a resurgence in later years now. The people are re-evaluating it, right? Just like I re-evaluated both Britney and Christina. So yeah, that is my 2 cents on that. What a journey, folks. That was quite a mixture there, from talking about the early days when I was frowning my nose at hard rock and heavy metal, and then we went into some Wham and Samantha Fox, and now we're rounding things up with Britney and Christina. What a wonderful, crazy world it is, right? But that's a good thing about not only re-evaluating artists or genres. It's about having an open mind for all kinds of things, right? Because they do liven up things, spice up your life if you want. Yeah, so now I think it's wonderful that I took that step, and I'm always open to listen to anything that comes my way. I might not love all of it, but I at least have an open mind nowadays when it comes to music. And I discovered so much along the way, both new and old, and there's even more to discover. But that's enough from me and me ranting about music once again. Thank you for watching yet another video with me, and please put down in the comments some of your re-evaluations you've done when it comes to music, artists, genres, whatever. And most importantly, I want to know, like I said before, did you ever encounter something like I did, being a lover of synth music and being set against some of the hard rock, heavy metal fanatics there, and there was this tensions and fights, and well, I want to know about it. I'm really, really curious about that. So put that down in the comments as well. And a big, big thank you to all of you who subscribe to my channel. Really warms my heart, I tell you. And if you really like what I'm doing, please put a thumbs up on this video, or thumbs down if you don't like it. I'm just after your honest opinion. But that's it. Until next time, folks, take care of yourself, and as usual, adieu.